SI Now, I'm Amy Campbell, joined by Robin Lemberg, and we've got a great show planned. We have some really compelling guests today. Our Rohan Nadkarni is here to talk NBA midseason awards. But first, oh boy, Robin, I can feel the collective gasp of fans reading Tom Brady injury in the headlines.
Is it a gasp, or is it, the cynical gasp where people are saying, hey, Bill Belichick might have put this out as a red herring, like, wait till they get a load of this to throw Jacksonville off their game plan?
Belichick is a ninja when it comes to that stuff. That is right. The GOAT himself, Tom Brady, was limited in practice Wednesday because of an injury to his throwing hand that happened when a teammate accidentally ran into him in practice. Ooh, nobody needs to freak out about this yet, because x-rays were taken and there's no structural damage. But Robin, this is his throwing hand. Should people be concerned?
Well, if it's a legitimate injury, yes, they should be very concerned. I mean, your throwing hand is maybe the most important thing for a quarterback. And let's go beyond that. I mean, that's common sense. That's a duh. And I really don't mean this as a joke, but we know that Tom Brady likes footballs underinflated. And that would indicate to me that he has a little bit of an issue with the grip otherwise. And therefore, if something is affecting his grip, we know he's already picky about that, then it could indicate, especially in the cold, a problem getting rid of the ball, being accurate with the ball, and against that Jacksonville secondary, that could be a real issue.
Well, Tom Brady has been on the IR twice this season already. Neither of them were for his throwing hand, though, and I think that is the key. That is probably the most important thing for him. Reports were saying his hand was jammed. I don't really know what that means. I want to know who ran into Tom Brady. Like, shouldn't there be like a bubble around that guy in practice? I think the Patriots are probably fine, but I am interested to see what we hear in the next couple days.
And again, I think a lot of people are going to be skeptical about this, because wasn't he listed on the injury report essentially in perpetuity with a shoulder issue?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Thunder blew out the Lakers as Carmelo Anthony had 27 points on 15 shots. After the game, he talked about his new role with the team, saying, quote, "Once you accept something, regardless of what it is, I think you become comfortable with it. The game is starting to become fun again for me, fun for us as a team." Does this show Melo's growth as a player, or is it something he should have done a long time ago?
I think he probably would have been having a lot more fun if he had done it a little bit sooner. I think it's something that, watching from the outside, we've kind of all commented that he needed to rethink his role and recognize that this is where he fits in now. This is how he can be more productive. This is how he can make his team more productive. He's averaging his lowest shots per game since his second season, but it seems to be working with the way he fits into this team as a role player for that role. It was an adjustment he needed to make. I think the whole team will be better for it. And honestly, Robin, I don't know what's more fun than winning, so I think he'll be having a lot more fun.
Well, he's been criticized a lot over his career for not adjusting, for needing to play mellow ball, that isolation at the top of the key, jab step, 18-footer. Linsanity, there was a problem with that and him meshing with Mike D'Antoni, later in his tenure with Phil Jackson, so on and so forth. But I do want to give some form of credit, because at least he is making the adjustment, and I think there's some sort of saying about better late than never, because I've always liked this role for Carmelo at the stretch four position. People talk about Olympic Melo, Euro Melo, whatever you want to call it, but really that's catch and shoot Melo, where he's making quick decisions with the basketball, and his percentages skyrocket when he's catch and shooting, rather than trying to be that scorer that he's been throughout his career.
I think that's a great point, because you're taking his strengths, what he does best, putting him in a position to shine, rather than saying, all right, go be something you're not.
And Russell Westbrook is at his best when he's dominating the ball. So they had to figure out a way to make all of those things work. And, maybe it took some struggles for Carmelo to see it, some age, some struggles, some experience. But I'm not going to blast him if he is making the proper adjustments. Speaking of adjustments, Wikipedia is unsure of what role it should play when it comes to the College Football National Championship. Of course, Alabama won the title game, but UCF also claimed a championship after an undefeated season. Wikipedia sees its role as documenting truth neutrally, and since the NCAA doesn't award an official Division I FBS title, they currently are debating whether to also recognize UCF's claim and the ramifications it would have on other pages for noting purposes. So, should Wikipedia recognize UCF's national title claim?
This story is so hilarious to me. I actually didn't know that the NCAA doesn't specifically award that national title. I think when it comes to what Wikipedia should do, I say why not? I know they were throwing around some terms like consensus national champion, claimed national champion. Another thing I thought was hilarious about this story was that the Wikipedia page was updated like over 90 times right after that Peach Bowl win by UCF. So people going back and forth saying champions, not champions, champions, not champions. Robin, a lot of Alabama's claimed national titles were awarded way back in the day by like the Tuscaloosa newspaper. So I think if UCF wants to do this, I think it's great for the program. I think it's really fun. And I say, why not? I do think Bama would kill them, though.
Well, you know, when you're talking about this story in Wikipedia, it's very funny, you know, reading up on it because everybody knows about the joking updates. And apparently Wikipedia calls those sort of updates by randos.
Yes.
But they do take it very seriously, and I applaud them for that. You know, Wikipedia is actually more accurate than the original encyclopedias because once those went into print, they could not be fixed, any errors. The problem here is the trickle-down effect. Because if they're just going to UCF's page and saying they claimed a national championship, I think we could all agree that took place. What happens if they recognize that in the national title debate is you have to then go into Alabama's page and all the pages, so on and so forth. I kind of like them doing it, recognizing it, because it adds more debate. It makes it more fun, and people will look back on it and remember it. But I can understand people saying, hey, come on. You know, they went undefeated, but they weren't the national champions. We all know that was Alabama.
I do think it is really fun, and it does add that debate. It's great for UCF, and I think it's great for Wikipedia, too, because those funny moments by those randos, we love to see that on Wikipedia after a sporting event. There's always those screenshots on Twitter of like, so-and-so's Wikipedia now says this. It's hilarious.
We've got some comments coming in. Janice Schock says, so glad my Niners got Garoppolo.
She's not wrong.
You know, that's one of the things that comes into play when you have a quarterback as old as Brady. Joydeep Mukherjee tweets in, fake injury as usual with the Patriots, while Kevin Arasso says, mind games, it's the Patriots' way. They must be scared. David Warren, anything with New England is suspect. Sounds like a storyline being set up. That seems to be the consensus.
Yes.
You know, if we were looking at the Wikipedia entry for this Tom Brady injury, a lot of people would be updating it saying, you know, I don't believe this.
Yeah, when I first saw that headline, Tom Brady not in practice today, limited injury report, I just rolled my eyes like, okay, he'll be fine this weekend.
Here's a counterpoint, though. So Kuhn Som says, haters everywhere. Guess when your team starts winning, you'll appreciate greatness. Go, Pats. Who's hating on the Patriots?
A Patriots
I didn't hate on the
there.
Patriots. Tom Brady does like the balls deflated. He's on the record in saying that.
It's not, yeah, it sounds like a Patriots fan. A classic. All right, so moving on to some more serious news. Brian Urlacher is being sued by the mother of his 12-year-old son for $125 million. Tina Kara George claims that Urlacher publicly portrayed her as a, quote, bad mother, unfit, and a killer, following the 2016 shooting death of her husband. Kara George told police that during an argument, her husband took a gun from her purse and shot himself in the head. It was ruled a suicide, but Kara George is now accusing Urlacher of painting her as guilty in order to gain custody of their son. Very complex story, obviously a very sad one. But Urlacher also happens to be up for the Hall of Fame this year. If you're a voter, do you think this impacts your decision in any way, Robin?
No, it doesn't. And I'm not going to speculate on this case. I don't know enough about it to do that. But when it comes to Hall of Fames, I don't really treat them as the Hall of Great Character anyway. I think you should separate those things. Now, if somebody's a bad guy, that's a terrible thing altogether. But when you're just simply saying, as a player, were they worthy of being in the Hall of Fame? That's how I would judge it. I mean, whether it's steroid guys in baseball or more serious accusations like this. And remember, if you are dealing with this particular Hall of Fame class, Ray Lewis is also up, and we all believe he's going to make it in. And, you know, if his incident doesn't keep him from being voted in, why would this for Brian Urlacher?
Yeah, I think I agree completely with what you said, that this is about on-field play. I think things like steroids or cheating or things that affect your performance or your game should affect your Hall of Fame chances, not necessarily things that happen off the field. As uncomfortable and disappointing as they may be, that's not what this award is for.
Now, perhaps these voters, because there are so many great candidates, they could use this as an excuse to push Urlacher further down the line when you do have Ray Lewis, when you do have Randy Moss, and of course, you do have Terrell Owens, once again up for induction. Meanwhile, Spurs star Kawhi Leonard is back on the sidelines indefinitely for the mysterious quad injury that held him out of the first quarter of the season. It's called tendinopathy. And we discussed it with Dr. Armin Tehrani, an orthopedic surgeon for Manhattan Orthopedic Care.
Kawhi Leonard. Very, very different, or so we think. You'll tell us. It's called tendinopathy. Can you describe what that is?
Sure. So the tendon is where the muscle inserts onto the bone. And so what can happen, especially in athletes, especially basketball players, is those tendons can get injured and they can get inflamed. And in a case like Kawhi's, it's from overuse, right? I mean, people are not usually working out as much as he is. And he's extremely explosive, too. So that also lends to the possibility of getting some type of tendinitis or tendinopathy. And this is just a look at the quad, which is, just right in the front of the leg. There are those quad muscles. And at the bottom near the kneecap, that's where he suffers the quad tendinitis.
Now, is there something a doctor can do to repair that, or is that more of you have to be off of it and sort of manage it and rehabilitate it before you get back out there?
So quad tendinopathy rarely needs to have surgery. It's usually something that can be treated conservatively with, rest, ice, compression, elevation, things of that nature, but mostly just ice to help bring the swelling down and rest to help the tendinitis to try to improve on its own. And then there are a lot of other things, including physical therapy, to try to get an NFL athlete back on his feet.
Okay, so, Kawhi is the odds-on MVP leader. Obviously, the Spurs are going to need him this season. What does it feel like to play through an injury like this? Because if he can't rest, if Greg Popovich keeps playing him, how's he going to manage that?
So it ends up being an issue where I think most of these players and their teams are aligned in the sense that when they understand what the diagnosis is, such as this, they do the right thing to try to get the player to rest, make sure he feels ready, make sure the physical therapist and the trainers agree. It's really a team effort to make sure that he's ready both physically and emotionally.
So would you say this is a short-term or a long-term thing for Kawhi Leonard here?
I haven't examined him. I don't know the extent of the tendinitis, but he made a good recovery from his tendinopathy on the other side in 2012. So I see no reason for why he shouldn't make a great recovery on this side as well.
You said that you would not treat tendinopathy with a surgery or anything like that. If he has to just play through it and play with it, can it have a ripple effect? I mean, if he's favoring it or compensating, would it affect other parts of his body?
It's possible, but with someone as healthy and fit as Kawhi, with the team that he's got behind him, the types of trainers and doctors that there, I would expect that he'll make a full recovery.
We're now here with the crossovers, Rohan Nadkarni. And Rohan, obviously, I think no one considers the Spurs contenders with Kawhi out. But are you starting to worry a little bit about his future in the NBA?
I don't know if I'm worried about his future. I mean, one thing we know about the Spurs is they're going to be, maybe the most cautious team in the league when it comes to injuries. I think that, they have enough in place, a good coaching staff in place, that they look at it. We can win games during the regular season. We don't need to be contenders in the regular season. I don't think they're worried about home court or where they finish in the West. So I think what we're looking now is a team that's being overly cautious. I'm personally not worried about his long-term health or anything like that.
Now, of course, Kawhi was somebody who was up for MVP, won't win it now, but it is time to go through some of the NBA midseason awards. Yeah. MVP is super tough this year. Who's your pick?
For me, it's got to be LeBron. I think Harden had a great case until he got hurt. He's kind of just on that fringe right now. I think there's kind of like an unofficial, barometer for games played, maybe around 65, 70. LeBron, what he's doing right now is just insane in year 15. I think you remember his first year back in Cleveland when the Cavs came out of the gate struggling, and a lot of people thought, did we see LeBron's prime in Miami? Did we see his best game, his best days? And now he's having maybe the best year of his career. I think he's the best player in the world, and he should be rewarded as such.
Tie goes to LeBron, right? That's what I would say. Yeah. And I don't think people realize how bad the Cavs would be if he wasn't on that team.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't know, the default answer every time is LeBron James. And like you mentioned, maybe having one of the best years of his career. As he gets older, he continues to get better. And I'm one of those people that sees MVP as a value award. And where would the Cavs be without him, I think, is the perfect way to describe it. All right, Rookie of the Year. Who's your guy for this one?
So this is a really tough one, right? And I'm going to admit to a little recency bias on this one, but I'm going to go Donovan Mitchell. Now, here are a couple things. In terms of Ben Simmons, I mean, Ben Simmons is a great player. If this is me voting for the award, I don't like giving it to guys that get the red shirt year. I mean, he gets the access to NBA training, healthcare, all those things. I think he has that unfair advantage. Now, a lot of people say, why not Jason Tatum? Jason Tatum is in kind of the perfect situation for a rookie. Obviously, with Hayward went down, his role kind of elevated. He's still behind, Kyrie Irving and Al Horford on that kind of pecking order there, maybe even Jaylen Brown. So I think he's kind of getting the easiest looks at any of these because you look at Donovan Mitchell, what happened to the Jazz, losing Hayward. They've had Gobert out for large stretches of the season. What he's done in terms of keeping them competitive, they're not a playoff team right now, but I think Mitchell has earned that award.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a close race. I don't go by the Rohan Rookie of the Year rules, so I would have to go, I think, Ben Simmons because of how important he is to that team, how many minutes he's playing. But I might have to put Mitchell third. Jason Tatum is on the best team in the Eastern Conference and has the best true shooting percentage for a rookie of all time.
It is incredible what Tatum is doing from three. Another thing I want to just throw in there about Simmons, there's something to be said about his performance when Embiid is on the court and when he's not on the court. And, Simmons looks a lot more like a rookie when Embiid isn't playing.
Yeah, Tatum is my pick as well. And I do agree about Simmons having that year of access to the NBA training. I don't know if I think there's a little asterisk there for me if he does get that award. I love what Jason Tatum is doing this year, and I love that killer instinct that he has, just being able to step up in those big moments. His fourth quarter numbers are incredible. He's really clutch for this team in a spot that he wasn't necessarily expecting to play heading into this year before Gordon Hayward's injury. I think he's been really impressive.
How about Coach of the Year?
This is a little bit of a homer pick for me, but I got to go with my guy, Eric Spoelstra, who I think maybe deserved the award last year. But you look, the Heat, they've won 7 of 8 after last night's win in Milwaukee. They're 4th in the East. They're a half game behind the Cleveland Cavaliers. If you look at some of the other teams in the East, I mean, when the Bucks got Bledsoe, everyone thought that was going to be a turning point for them. The Heat have 2 wins over the Celtics. They've beaten Toronto in Toronto, ending a home streak Toronto had there. The Heat have been dealing with all kinds of injuries. I mean, Whiteside's missed a bunch of games. Dragic missed a bunch of games. Winslow missed 14. Now Tyler Johnson's out. What he's doing with the collection of, again, cast-offs, guys no one else in the NBA seemingly wanted, having them in the position they're in right now. For the second half of last season and the first half of this season, the Miami Heat's record was 55-28, which is just absurd. So I think he should get rewarded for that.
Yeah, I do think people are sleeping on Spo a little bit. We kind of ignore what he's doing there, like you said, with all those cast-off guys. I really like that pick. But I'm going to go with Brad Stevens for what he's been able to do in Boston this year, having Gordon Hayward out unexpectedly, getting Jason Tatum in the lineup, having him have success. They're looking really good, really strong on both sides of the ball, and I think it's really exciting. And guys want to play for him. Another point that I like a lot. Well,
Brad Stevens may be the successor to Greg Popovich for the consensus best coach in the NBA, so I give him the award as well, but much respect for the Spoelstra pick. I like that. You know, he's one of the great coaches. He doesn't really get recognized for it.
Yeah, you're already labeling Stevens as a successor. I mean, so what about Spo? He's got 2 championships.
And right now, he might not have a top 50 player in the league on that team.
Yeah.
Impressive. What about best social media? There's a lot of fun stuff going on this year.
So, you know, I think I tried to go a little bit outside the box with my pick here. You know, a lot of people are going to pick a player. I'm going Daryl Morey, general manager of the Houston Rockets. Now, he's not a prolific tweeter. I don't even know if he's on Instagram. But every now and then he tosses out these little gems. And you had this in the wake of the Rockets-Clippers fight. He had that Paul Pierce tweet. You know, retweeting the Elmo meme. I think he's kind of with it. Like, it's kind of funny when he decides to tweet. He usually has something smart to say. He interacts with fans, with media guys. He just seems like a very normal general manager. So I like Daryl Morey for being sneakily funny on Twitter.
Well, he liked one of my tweets
before,
there we
go, yeah.
Respect to him there. But I go with LeBron James for, you know, he gets the points, he gets the rebounds, he gets the assists. He's kind of the same on social media, where he'll weigh in with the memes that everybody laughs in. He'll get involved politically and say something that spreads like wildfire. And at the same time, we're always, you know, guessing about his next tweet or Instagram caption. Plus, he reviews music on mine before everybody else gets it. A&R Braun, they call him, right? So I think it has to be LeBron James.
I do think that the meme of the year is the Arthur, but I'm going to give this to Joel Embiid because he was doing this, I think, when people were still kind of being a little politically correct on Twitter. He's like a guy that nobody knows unless you watch college basketball and saw him at Kansas looking dominant. But he comes into the league and everyone's like, who is this rookie who's on the bench most of the time? And he is super aggressive. He's really funny, just calling out everyone. He doesn't care. Before he had earned that respect on the court, and he's still working on that, obviously. He just says whatever he wants, and I think it's great for the game.
Now, there's been a lot of beef in the NBA as of late. What's the NBA beef of the season?
So, Robin, you know me, I'm all about nonviolence. So I can't really go with all these fights. You know, I don't know if I want to see that. So I'm going with, you know, piggybacking off of Amy here, Joel Embiid versus truly anyone, whether it's Hassan Whiteside, Andre Drummond, Karl Anthony Towns. Here we got Lonzo Ball. This guy is not afraid to go at anybody, and I love that. And the best part is, he's clever. He's funny. I mean, a lot of guys try to go at people, and it comes off as mean, or he is so witty. Like, I'm jealous of how funny his tweets are. And it's always backed up with like the proper stats too. Like he'll go after Karl Towns and Andre Drummond for their defense. Or he'll go at Hassan Whiteside for his plus minus. I'm impressed with how well researched his jokes are.
I'm going to say Isaiah Thomas and Paul Pierce because it led to the most discussion.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You know, we're talking about tribute videos. We're talking about Pierce and the hierarchy of Boston Celtics. We're talking about Isaiah Thomas and what he's going to do for the Cavs, pettiness, as Amy mentioned. So to me, it's IT versus the truth.
I'm going Katie and Russell. I think we got recency bias with what's been going on there with IT and Paul Pierce. What I love about this is that they act like it doesn't exist, right? They say all the right things with a little side eye. And then on the court, they are talking nonstop. In their last game, you saw they had that very intense, like, forehead touching moment.
That was
but
nice.
Also, Rohan, I was thinking for a guy like you who prefers the nonviolence, you would like what Greg Popovich had to say about how all NBA guys just fight, like, you want a piece of me?
Yeah.
Hold me back, man. Hold me back. And they don't actually want to hit each other.
That pop quote was great, by the way. He was like, all NBA fights are the namby-pambiest things I've ever seen, except for that one that got into the stands.
Do you think LeBron should sign with the Spurs just so we can have all the Popovich and LeBron quotes in one place?
Oh, that would be awesome for a lot of reasons. I mean, just like what would they do on the court, but just the political takes coming from there every week would be fun to watch.
All right, so speaking of beef, it's not just players and players, it's also players on refs.
I'm lost for words. I wasn't expecting to get a technical like that because I wasn't saying anything towards the ref, and I wasn't saying anything that should have got me a tech.
I mean, it's frustrating, you know, being out there feeling like you playing 5-on-8. It's just what it feel like, period. Some of them calls was terrible.
I'm done with them. I'm done with the ref.
Talk about how special it was.
Not to disrespect.
No,
I'm done with them.
I find that pretty entertaining. Rohan, whose side are you on? The players, the refs? What do you think of this whole thing?
So I'm normally, a very pro-player guy, and I think they're making some interesting points here. I will say that the refs in the NBA have such a tough job. You could scrutinize every single call they make. I mean, everything's being judged in super slow-mo, all this stuff. I think they're doing a fairly good job. I think the refs are not as big of a problem as the players are making it seem. You have guys like Draymond Green going after the refs, saying all refs need to be replaced. Draymond Green could get kicked out of every single game he plays in, the way he complains, the way he, to the gestures he makes after every call. And how many replays have we shown where Draymond Green did commit that foul? And no one talks about, plays like that. So I don't know if I'm necessarily on the ref's side, but I do think the players are maybe taking this a little bit too far.
Appreciate the time today. Lover of peace and the crossovers, yes. Rohan Nadkarni. Of course, if there was an award for best team, it would go to the Golden State Warriors, and best backcourt, the Splash Brothers, who are our adrenaline performers presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Klay Thompson and Steph Curry combined for 68 points. Many of the points came from behind the three-point line, as would be expected, as they nailed 13 three-pointers on over 50% shooting from deep. Their impact was felt on the floor as well, as Golden State beat Chicago by 7, but outscored the Bulls by 21 and 14, with Curry and Klay on the court, respectively.
Your Honor, with your permission, I would now like to address the defendant.
You may.
After my parents confronted you, they brought you back to my house to speak with me. Sitting on my living room couch, I listened to you tell me, no one should ever do that, and if they do, you should tell someone. Well, Larry, I'm here, not to tell someone, but to tell everyone. You convinced my parents that I was a liar, that you didn't strategically place lotion in the basement so you could beat your penis in my face while I hid. But I still get sick at the smell of that lotion. You convinced my parents that you didn't pull my feet into your lap, unzip your pants, and rub your erect penis against my bare skin. But I still flinch when my feet are near someone's lap. You convinced my parents that you didn't stick your fingers in my adolescent vagina. But I knew when it was time to use my first tampon, not to worry, because my hymen wasn't intact. You used my body for 6 years for your own sexual gratification. That is unforgivable. I've been coming for you for a long time. I've told counselors your name in hopes that they would report you. I have reported you to Child Protective Services twice. I gave a testament to get your medical license revoked. You were first arrested on my charges. And now, as the only non-medical victim to come forward, I testified to let the world know that you are a repulsive liar and that those treatments were pathetically veiled sexual abuse. Perhaps you have figured it out by now, but little girls don't stay little forever. They grow into strong women that return to destroy your world.
Larry Nassar used his power as Team USA gymnastics doctor to molest his patients for decades. And now his victims have the opportunity to take their power back in the form of sharing their stories. Nassar has already been sentenced to 60 years in prison, but there's potentially more to come. And this week he sits in the witness stand as his victims address him face to face. Our own Michael Rosenberg is there in Lansing, Michigan, and he joins us now. Michael, would you describe the scene for us in the courtroom?
It's heartbreaking and only more heartbreaking because of how repetitive it is. I mean, it's woman after woman telling really different versions of the same story of what he did to them, and seeing the lives he destroyed or almost destroyed, and these women were somehow able to bounce back and recover. It's just the worst of humanity. It's really, really difficult to watch, but I think it's important to watch. The most encouraging thing for me is that some of these women who had planned on remaining anonymous felt that they could put their name on it after seeing other victims. And when you're other survivors, when you're in that room, you see so many of them together, and he suddenly just seems so small. I feel like it was really an empowering moment that they deserved, and it was really overwhelming.
Now, you mentioned, Michael, that the number is just staggering. Some 101 women are expected to share their stories of abuse, with that number continuing to grow as women call in asking to be included. Was there anything specific that stood out to you the most from their testimony?
Well, I think the question that we all have at this point is how did it get this far? It's amazing how many different women did complain. Most of them did not. I mean, they're young girls. They think they did something wrong. This is a really well-respected doctor. Understandably, they didn't want to complain. They didn't even, some of them didn't even realize something was horribly wrong. They weren't fully conscious of it until later. But enough did complain and did say something that you do wonder why. And I don't think it's a simple matter of apathy from the people that didn't do something. I think sometimes they're scared to get involved. They don't know what to do. There was a lot of miscommunication. But you're in there and you're just going, please, can we all watch this? Can we all learn from this? Because there will be more predators like this. There will be more pedophiles, and you can't see it coming, but when it happens, there was just no reason for it to get to this level.
Michael, Nassar has already been sentenced. Is there some legal element to the women addressing Nassar, or is it just a chance for them to find some sort of healing and solace?
Well, he was sentenced for possession of child pornography, but he will still be sentenced tomorrow for other crimes. Now, he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, the judge, Aquilina, made it very clear numerous times in speaking to the survivors this week that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. So this is not going to affect the sentence in any way. But the reason that she set 4 days aside for victim impact statements was for them and was for the community to hear what they have to say. And legally, will it affect the course of this? No, that's done. But I think it's been really, I think it's been helpful for them. I think that they've had their say in court. I think that they've been able to see other women have their say. They know more than ever that they're not alone. And it's really a good thing, I think, that the judge did, even though, again, she made it clear she had reached her conclusion about the rest of his life before anybody spoke this week.
Now, this morning, Nassar sent a letter to the judge saying he was concerned about his ability to listen to all of those women. How did Nassar respond to the women, and what do you make of this letter?
Well, I don't think anyone's going to have any sympathy or understanding for him, certainly. I mean, I I don't know. It's hard to imagine even what he's thinking. As I talked to Kyle Stevens, who you showed in the video, and she said obviously his brain is not wired like other people's brains are. So we don't really know what he's thinking. If it's a matter of just making him sit there and listen to it, I mean that's a very, very, very small price to pay, obviously, compared to the crimes that he committed. What else they do for him in the rest of his life in prison, that's something they're going to have to deal with and watch as they would with any prisoner. But I can't imagine that they're going to say, "Oh, well, we feel bad for you now." I mean, that's not obviously going to happen.
Simone Biles on Monday was the latest high-profile gymnast to come forward. After this hearing is done, will it be the end of the story? Do you think there will be more?
Well, to me, the story now moves along to Michigan State and USA Gymnastics. Now, those are different situations. At Michigan State, the gymnastics coach clearly knew. It's not clear, and there was a dean who clearly had been informed. It's not clear, to me at least, that the school president was fully complicit in this, or that the athletic director, who has not really been mentioned, Mark Hollis, was complicit in this. That doesn't seem fully to be the case, but Michigan State obviously made some grave errors. USA Gymnastics needs to just clean house completely. I mean, the Board of Trustees, everybody there, the way they acted here is an utter disgrace. It can't even be dismissed as incompetence. So those are the two organizations, Michigan State and USA Gymnastics, that I hope continue to feel heat and continue to be evaluated for what they did wrong.
Michael, we really appreciate your insight and your time on this. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Robin, that was tough to watch. I was really moved by watching Kyle's testimony, and I spent some time watching some of the others. Really moving, really heartbreaking. I feel thankful that these women's voices are finally being heard after all of that time of them not being listened to. But I think Michael hit on a really good note there, that there's more coming, especially when it comes to USA Gymnastics and Michigan State, where they have not really responded much to all of this, and they are definitely accountable.
Just a truly awful story. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I totally agree with Michael. No one is going to have any sympathy for Nassar here. And I suppose if something good is to come of it, it is, like you said, you hope that the women who were abused here are able to move forward positively and maybe, put that behind them in a more positive light going forward, because they were able to share this and because they were able to see him be punished for those acts. We'll be back tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, right here on SI Now Live. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter for the latest updates and videos at SI Now Live.